There comes a moment in every life when a quiet thought rises from deep inside, a thought so bold that it interrupts everything you once believed about who you are and what you are meant to be. That moment is the beginning of your transformation, even if the world has no idea that something great has just awakened in you. Part 1. Most people move through life believing the worker is the true engine of progress. They admire the one who toils, who obeys, who performs every task placed before them with faithful consistency. Society praises the disciplined worker for showing up on time, following the rules, keeping the machine running. Yet here lies the paradox that few dare to speak aloud. It is not the worker who truly changes the course of life. It is the person who refuses to remain only a worker who rises above the ordinary path and creates impact. The world salutes diligence, but it rewards those who dare to question the routine. The worker asks, "What must I do?" The leader asks, "What must be done?" One chases approval, the other creates direction. One waits for instruction, the other seeks purpose. You were not born simply to fulfill orders written by people who came long before you. You entered this world with an unshaped will, a spark of imagination, a natural hunger to explore. You were not born to be a follower. No child is born asking for permission to think, yet as you grew, guidance turned into command. You were told where to walk, how to sit, when to speak, and even what to dream. You learned that praise comes from compliance. Reward comes from fitting in. You discovered that safety hides in the familiar. That approval is earned by obeying. Without noticing it, you began to measure your worth in tasks completed, boxes checked, expectations met. This is how most of the world continues to move through life. Not because people are lazy or unambitious, but because they have been silently trained to follow patterns designed long before they were born. They settle into routine not from weakness but from habit. They follow instruction not because they lack vision but because no one taught them how to build one. You complete your assignments. You finish the tasks. You keep the rhythm of routine alive. And you hope that one day the world will reward your diligence. You believe that if you work hard enough, long enough, perfectly enough, something meaningful will finally happen. You hope that someday your efforts will be enough to lift you to a higher level. But then comes the moment. The moment that shifts everything. It rarely arrives with applause or celebration. Often it comes in silence, late at night, or in the tired pause between two long days. A subtle thought begins to rise in your mind like a bell ringing far away but meant only for you. You realize that running faster on the same track will never build a new world. You understand that staying busy is not the same as moving forward. You begin to see that checking every box does not create direction. Motion does not equal meaning. Noise does not equal purpose. Activity does not guarantee growth. This is the turning point. It begins with a simple question, one that feels small at first, yet carries the weight to change your entire life. Why am I doing this? What does it matter? What am I building? Who will it serve beyond myself? These questions are not born from frustration. They are born from awakening. Here, in this quiet inner space, the difference between a worker and a leader begins to form. The worker asks what next. The leader asks what for. The worker completes the day. The leader designs the destination. A leader is not appointed by a title. A leader is created by a decision. A decision to take responsibility not only for actions but for their impact. A decision to claim ownership over vision, direction, and meaning. When you finally accept that your life is shaped by your choices and not by the orders you follow, something powerful begins to grow inside you. You start to think differently. You start to notice details others overlook. You understand strategies more than routines. You see systems where others see chores. You separate urgent distractions from important missions. You begin to feel the difference between living under pressure and living with purpose. You pay attention to the quiet truth that not every action creates meaning. Some actions only maintain the familiar. But the moment you choose purpose over pressure, you step into a new realm. A realm where clarity replaces confusion and direction replaces routine. This is where leadership is born. Not in public applause, not on stages, not through titles, but in the private stillness of your own mind. Leadership begins in the silence where you give yourself permission to think differently. It begins when you finally ask why instead of simply asking what. It begins when you allow yourself to imagine a future that does not follow the path handed to you by others. In this moment, you take back your authority. You claim your power to design not only your days but your direction. You begin to build your life from the inside outward. You step away from routine and toward purpose. And though the world may not notice this change at first, your destiny certainly does. This quiet act, invisible to most, marks the beginning of a profound transformation. It is the moment your life stops following the script written by others and begins to unfold according to your vision. It is the awakening of the leader within you. And once you awaken that leader, your life will never move the same way again. If you want, I can now create part 2 in the same style. Part 2: The Power of Stillness and Self-Mastery. Engaging hook. There is a rare kind of power that does not shout, does not rush, does not seek attention. It is the power that comes from a mind so steady, so centered, that even chaos bends around it. The moment you discover this power within yourself, your entire life begins to rise to a higher level. Part 2: Imagine a general standing on a battlefield. The noise is overwhelming, the tension unbearable, and yet the general does not shout commands across the field. Instead, he watches, he waits, he reads every shift in the wind and every movement of his enemy. His presence alone carries more weight than 100 loud voices. His calm becomes a signal stronger than any order he could scream. His silence becomes leadership. Picture a commander whose soldiers move at the mere lift of his eyes. No frantic motion, no loud instruction, only the steady confidence of a person who knows exactly who he is and what must be done. His silence does not show uncertainty. It shows mastery. It reveals that true control does not come from noise but from the strength to decide when to speak and when to hold still. Now think of the rare individual who unsettles others not by dramatic words but by calm composure. People who thrive on noise feel uncomfortable in the presence of someone who cannot be rushed. Someone who does not react at every provocation. Someone who holds back their words until the right moment. This is not weakness. This is the mastery of the space between stimulus and response. It is the mastery that great leaders cultivate, and it is available to you as well. The average worker moves through the world with scattered attention. They reach outward, seeking approval, validation, and reassurance. Their energy is spent trying to be seen, trying to be heard, trying to prove their worth. They react quickly to criticism, rushing to defend themselves before their thoughts have even formed. They believe that constant motion equals progress and constant explanation equals strength. The leader moves differently. The leader turns inward. They notice the impulse to react but do not let the impulse control them. They pause. They breathe. They create a moment of stillness in which their mind can settle. In this stillness, judgment sharpens. In this stillness, clarity rises. In this stillness, power is born. Leaders do not spend their energy on unnecessary explanations. They do not waste their breath trying to defend what does not need defending. They understand that silence can be a shield, not an emptiness. Silence can be a strategy, not a surrender. To the untrained, silence feels uncomfortable. It feels exposing. It feels like a void that must be filled. But to the disciplined mind, silence is a crucible. It is a place where thoughts settle and priorities rise. It is the space where wisdom gathers. In silence, leaders refine their thoughts, sharpen their intentions, and prepare their actions. A true leader commands a room not by dominating it with noise but by anchoring it with presence. People feel the steadiness before they hear the words. They recognize that calm is not the absence of emotion but the control of it. If you aspire to lead, begin by valuing the kind of quiet that unsettles the crowd. Learn to protect the interval between what the world throws at you and how you choose to respond. That interval is where strategy forms. That interval is where clarity lives. That interval is where your authority is shaped. Replace emotion with evaluation. Not by rejecting your feelings but by guiding them. Emotion is a powerful tool, but only when it is contained and directed. When emotion rules your mind, it becomes your master. When you rule emotion, it becomes your servant. Most people are not taught this difference. The average worker moves through life ruled by feelings in the moment. When a challenge appears, emotion takes the lead. Blame appears. Panic rises. Complaints take over. The worker retreats from discomfort. They allow frustration to derail their focus and anger to fog their judgment. They let fear shrink their possibilities. The leader stands apart. Not because they do not feel these emotions, but because they refuse to be governed by them. When obstacles appear, the leader becomes an anchor. They do not drown in frustration. They do not waste energy wishing things were different. They ask the questions that matter. What happened? Why did it happen? What must be done now? This discipline is often misunderstood. It is not indifference. It is not coldness. It is the strength to keep long-term priorities above short-term storms. It is self-mastery, the ability to rule your inner world before you attempt to influence the outer one. Anger clouds judgment. Fear distorts perspective. Frustration drains energy. Many people believe they must express every feeling in order to release it. They confuse expression with resolution. They confuse emotional reaction with progress. But the truth is far more liberating. You do not need to empty every emotion to find peace. You must learn to understand your emotions rather than obey them. Imagine the mind of a leader as a fortress. Emotions will come. Anger, fear, doubt, excitement. But they do not automatically gain entry. They knock on the gate, but the leader examines each one. What is this feeling? Why is it here? Does it help my mission or harm it? Only emotions that bring wisdom are allowed to guide decisions. The rest are dismissed. Growing into this discipline does not mean suppressing your feelings. It means transforming them. It means seeing each emotion as a messenger, not a master. Ask yourself each time emotion rises. What belief is this tied to? Does this belief move me forward or hold me back? How can I turn this feeling into insight, into action, into growth? This is the alchemy of leadership. This is how you rise. Not by running from emotion but by refining it into power. In a world filled with noise, people chase the loudest voice. But when crisis strikes, they look to the calmest mind. The world may follow the loud for a moment, but it bows to the composed in the long run. Now consider the next level of insight. Do not serve the system. Study it. Most people spend their lives working inside structures they never question. They become experts in one small part of the machine, yet remain blind to the larger design that controls their destiny. They keep routines alive without ever knowing why. They patch problems without questioning the system that created them. But a leader rises above. A leader steps back and sees the bigger picture. They do not say this is just the way things are. They ask, why are things this way? They do not hope problems disappear. They seek the root so they can remove it for good. The worker fixes the part. The leader understands the whole. And understanding the whole is the beginning of mastery. If you want, I can create part 3 in the same style right now. Part 3: The Blueprint of Leadership and the Rise Above the Average. Engaging hook. Every person you admire, every leader you respect, every visionary who changed the course of history began with one powerful moment. It was not a moment of applause or praise. It was the moment they realized they no longer had to accept the world as it was handed to them. They could question it. They could reshape it. They could rise above it. Part 3: There comes a time when you must stop walking blindly with the crowd and start seeing the world with your own eyes. Most people are taught from childhood to follow the path already drawn. They are trained to keep their heads down, finish the task, and stay inside the lines. They learn to obey the rules without ever questioning who created those rules in the first place. Workers deal with symptoms. They see each problem as a separate issue that must be patched and handled. If something breaks, they fix the break. If someone complains, they soothe the complaint. If a crisis appears, they hurry to put out the fire. But they rarely stop to ask the deeper questions. Why did this happen? What is the root? What system allowed this to occur again and again? Leaders think differently. Leaders look for causes. They search for the source of imbalance, the hidden assumptions that shape daily decisions, the quiet patterns most people never notice. They see the machine behind the motion. Once you begin to see these patterns, you gain the ability to shape them. You stop being a servant of the design and become an architect with the power to improve it. This is the real essence of leadership. It is the ability to see what others overlook. It is the courage to question what others accept as normal. It is the willingness to challenge the structure rather than merely survive inside it. Behind every rule, every system, every institution you see, there were people who created it. They were not gods. They were not geniuses beyond reach. They were human beings no smarter or more capable than you. When this truth sinks in, your entire world expands. You realize that nothing is set in stone. Everything can be examined. Everything can be improved. Everything can be rebuilt. But it begins with new eyes. Refuse to be hypnotized by routine. Let curiosity sharpen your mind instead of letting repetition dull it. Step back, study the whole picture, and then act not only for your own peace but for the benefit of the entire system you are part of. A leader knows that understanding the whole is what gives you influence. But that influence grows only when you own the outcome, not just the effort. Most people worship effort because they have never been taught a higher standard. They cling to struggle as proof of worth. They believe that if they tried their best, they deserve praise even when nothing meaningful was accomplished. "I tried my best" becomes both excuse and shield. But the world does not change through trying. It changes through results. A farmer does not receive food simply because he worked hard. He receives food because something grew. A builder is not celebrated because he sweat for hours. He is celebrated because the bridge stands strong. Reality responds to outcome, not intention. The worker clings to fairness. I did my part. I followed the rules. I put in the hours. I struggled. What more can anyone ask? When outcomes fall short, they point to the process as if the process should protect them from consequence. They rehearse their difficulties, tally every hardship, and hope that the story of their effort will soften the truth of their result. The leader operates by a different standard. The leader asks a sharper set of questions. Did it work? Did it move us forward? Did I solve the problem? For the leader, effort is not the destination. Effort is only the vehicle. The only thing that matters is where the vehicle arrives. This shift from effort to outcome is life-changing. It strips away excuses. It exposes blind spots. It forces you to confront the truth instead of hiding behind struggle. Many people resist this mindset because it demands maturity. It requires you to see yourself clearly without the comforting fog of almost. This is not a rejection of process. Process matters deeply. But process is only meaningful when it serves the outcome. You use the process as long as it works. When it fails, you adjust. You change direction. You refine. You adapt. You keep going until the result appears. Process is a means, not an end. When a worker fails, they review the conditions. They blame circumstances, luck, timing, or other people. When a leader fails, they dissect the failure with precision. What did I misjudge? What assumption did I make? What warning signs did I ignore? What must I change so this failure does not repeat? Leaders hunger for truth more than comfort. Owning the outcome is not an act of self-criticism. It is an act of self-respect. It is a promise you make to yourself that you will not hide behind excuses or accept less than what you are capable of. It strengthens your character in a way that comfort never can. And as you embrace this mindset, your language changes. I thought someone else was handling it becomes I failed to confirm it was handled. No one told me becomes I did not ask. I tried becomes I will try again in a better way until I succeed. This shift marks the beginning of true leadership. You stop narrating your effort and begin engineering your impact. It will make you stand out. Others may call you too strict or too demanding, but they do not carry the responsibility you have chosen for yourself. The more you live this way, the more people trust you. Not because you avoid mistakes, but because you do not disappear when things go wrong. You stand firm. You face the consequence. You say, I am accountable. Let us fix this. That moment is when real influence is born. But leadership demands something else. It demands that you understand people not as problems but as patterns. Most workers judge people by how easy or difficult they make the day. They react to moods, emotions, and attitudes as personal insults. But a leader looks deeper. A leader studies human behavior with curiosity. Beneath every tone, emotion, hesitation, or burst of confidence there is a pattern. Every reaction reveals something about fear, pride, ambition, insecurity, loyalty, or fatigue. The worker asks, why are they acting like this to me? The leader asks, what is truly driving this behavior? Leaders learn to listen beneath the surface. When someone complains, they hear the fear. When someone brags, they hear the insecurity. When someone resists change, they sense the anxiety of losing control. With this understanding, the leader stops fighting people and begins guiding them. Influence grows not through pressure but through insight. You learn to place people where their strengths match the mission. You speak in ways that reach their deeper motives. You work with their patterns rather than against them. But this study of patterns must also turn inward. You must examine your own reactions. Where do you avoid confrontation? Where do you overpromise to feel valued? Where do you hesitate because you fear being wrong? Where does pride disguise itself as principle? Only through this honesty can you refine yourself. Leadership is built on this dual awareness. You are dealing with humans and you are one of them. The more clearly you understand the predictable nature of people, including yourself, the calmer and more decisive you become. Workers live in shock at the unexpected. Leaders are rarely surprised because they have studied the predictable in human behavior. With this clarity, you rise above frustration and begin shaping outcomes. But to step fully into leadership, one final requirement must be met. You must raise your standards and shrink your circle. Most people live by the standards of the crowd. They want to fit in, not stand out. Their choices are softened by the opinions of those around them. Belonging becomes more important than becoming. But the average is where dreams go to sleep. Leadership grows from standards. A standard is a promise you make to yourself. It is the line you refuse to cross, even when no one is watching. It is the discipline you will not abandon and the quality you will not compromise. Standards create leaders, not crowds. This is where your rise truly begins. If you want, I can create part 4 in the same style right now. Part 4: Leadership of Insight. Seeing patterns, not problems. Engaging hook. Most people walk through life believing they are dealing with difficult people. But leaders discover something shocking once they rise high enough. They are not dealing with difficult people at all. They are dealing with patterns. And the moment you understand those patterns, you stop feeling frustrated, and you start feeling powerful. Part 4: When I was young, I used to think people were the biggest challenge in any job. Their moods, their tempers, their excuses, their reactions. Every day felt like navigating around little storms. Someone would come in angry, and my whole mood shifted. Someone would complain, and I would take it personally. Someone would resist a new idea, and I felt attacked. I believed they were my problem. I did not yet understand what Napoleon Hill taught through every page of his philosophy. A leader's duty is not to survive people. A leader's duty is to understand them. One day, my mentor asked me a question that changed my life. He said, "Why do you think people do what they do?" I answered quickly, "Because they feel like it." He smiled and said, "No, they do what they do because something inside them makes them do it. A pattern, a belief, a fear, a habit, a wound, a desire. If you do not learn to see that pattern, you will always misjudge the person." That moment opened a new way of seeing the world for me. I began to pay attention the way a scientist observes a rare phenomenon. When someone raised their voice, instead of reacting, I asked myself, what is underneath this? When someone bragged loudly, I wondered what insecurity they were hiding. When someone resisted a new idea, I looked for the fear behind the resistance. Suddenly, people no longer looked chaotic. They looked predictable. The more I observed, the more I realized Hill was right. Human behavior is rarely random. It is shaped by hidden forces that most people never take time to notice. Workers view behavior as personal. Leaders view behavior as information. A worker says, "Why are they doing this to me?" A leader asks, "What does this reveal about their inner world?" This shift changed everything. I stopped wasting energy on being offended. I started using that energy to understand. And understanding gave me influence. Once I saw patterns, I realized how often people around me were acting from fear. The fear of being wrong. The fear of being overlooked. The fear of losing status. The fear of being embarrassed. And when you see fear clearly, you stop fighting people, and you begin helping them. A leader is not someone who demands perfect behavior. A leader is someone who understands what drives behavior and guides people towards something better. Napoleon Hill wrote that successful leaders possess the ability to read people as easily as a book. Not because they are special or gifted, but because they pay attention. They listen twice as much as they speak. They watch twice as closely as they judge. That is what I began doing. I listened to the tone, not just the words. I watched facial expressions, reactions, and hesitation. I noticed who needed reassurance, who needed clarity, who needed praise, who needed challenge. I realized that while workers try to motivate everyone the same way, leaders understand that motivation is not one size fits all. Some people respond to encouragement. Some respond to responsibility. Some respond to urgency. Some respond to recognition, and this level of understanding does not only apply to others. The most powerful shift happens when you turn the lens inward. I discovered patterns inside myself I had ignored for years. I noticed how often I avoided speaking up to keep the peace. I noticed how often I overworked to earn approval. I noticed how often I hesitated because I feared judgment. These patterns had been controlling me without my awareness. Once I saw them clearly, they began to lose power. Hill taught that no one can lead others until they master themselves. That truth hit me hard. Leaders are not just managers of people. Leaders are students of human nature. They see deeper than words and faster than emotions. They see the root, not just the reaction. As I practiced this skill day after day, my confidence grew. I no longer felt blindsided by people's moods or shocked by their reactions. I could anticipate behavior before it unfolded. I could understand someone more from a 5-minute conversation than I previously could in a month. This gave me calm. Predictability creates peace. Workers go through life in a constant state of shock. They get surprised by arguments, surprised by mistakes, surprised by resistance, surprised by their own emotions. Leaders rarely feel this surprise. It is not because they are cold. It is because they have taken the time to study the predictable patterns inside human behavior. This one shift changed how people responded to me. Team members who once resisted me began to trust me. People who once argued with me began seeking my advice. Those who were once closed off began opening up. Why? Because when people feel understood, they naturally follow. Influence does not come from authority alone. It comes from insight. The deeper I saw, the more effective I became. I stopped trying to force cooperation. I earned cooperation. I stopped reacting to behavior. I shaped behavior. And slowly, I rose above managing tasks and began leading minds. That is the level Hill spoke of, a leader not of labor, but of thinking, emotion, and spirit. The more I studied people, the more I realized the greatest secret of leadership is this. Human beings are not problems to be solved. They are patterns to be understood. And when you understand them, you gain a power that cannot be taken away. In this part of the journey, you must become a student of human nature. Do not resent people for being human. Observe them with curiosity. Listen for what is beneath the words. Look past the surface. Understand the pattern. And then use that understanding to build trust, influence, and progress. For the leader who sees deeply is the leader who leads effectively. And once you begin to see people clearly, the world will never look the same again. Part 5: Mastering Responsibility. From effort to outcome. Engaging hook. The moment you stop blaming circumstances, stop hoping others will carry the weight, and fully embrace the results of your actions, everything changes. True leaders are not made by effort alone. They are made by the relentless pursuit of results, by owning their impact, and by refusing to settle for almost. Part 5. I remember sitting in a room filled with people who prided themselves on effort. They worked long hours. They stayed late. They struggled. They told stories of their challenges, their obstacles, and their sacrifices. And yet, nothing meaningful changed. I realized then what Napoleon Hill often said in his writings. Effort is admirable, but effort alone does not create progress. Progress is measured by results. Workers cling to the idea that hard work is proof of worth. I tried my best becomes a shield, a way to protect themselves from the harsh truth that results matter more than effort. If the report is incomplete, the project delayed, the team underperforming, they point to the long hours, the difficulties, the struggles. And in their minds, this should be enough to earn respect. But it is not enough. A leader's mind is fixed on responsibility. Did it work? Did it move us forward? Did I solve the problem? These questions replace I tried. Leaders understand that effort is the vehicle, but results are the destination. No amount of sweat, time, or struggle can substitute for tangible impact. A bridge must hold. A crop must grow. A plan must succeed. The world answers to reality, not to intentions. I learned this lesson in a project that seemed simple at first. The team worked tirelessly, and every day was filled with motion. Everyone gave their best effort. But as deadlines approached, the results were not matching the work invested. I could see that if we continued focusing on effort alone, we would fail. Something had to change. I began asking different questions. Not what are we doing, but why are we doing it this way? Not how hard are we working, but are we producing the outcome we promised? I analyzed the process. I questioned assumptions. I measured progress against reality, not perception. Slowly, I began reshaping the approach. Tasks were reassigned. Steps were removed. Focus shifted. Effort remained, but it was directed by outcome. This shift is not comfortable. It is not easy. Most people resist it because it forces them to abandon excuses. To confront the truth that trying is not enough. To face the results without hiding behind circumstances. But this is the essence of leadership. It is the courage to stand where others hide. To demand clarity when others tolerate chaos. To own the outcome when others claim effort. Workers rehearse failure. They point to bad luck, miscommunication, or obstacles outside their control. Leaders interrogate failure. They ask what they misjudged, what assumption was incorrect, what blind spot was overlooked, and what must change so this does not happen again. Leaders do not waste energy blaming the environment. They spend energy improving it. I watched this pattern in every great leader I encountered. They did not claim perfection. They did not avoid mistakes. What set them apart was that they never hid from consequences. They faced the results head on. They said, I am accountable. And because of that, people followed them. Trust is not built by promises. Trust is built by responsibility. Responsibility transforms language. I thought someone else was handling it because I confirmed it was handled. No one told me because I did not ask. I tried because I will try again, differently until it works. This is the difference between moving through life and leading it. This mindset is heavy. It is rare. It demands more than most are willing to give. And that is exactly why it creates leaders. Responsibility extends beyond tasks. It includes people. A leader studies human behavior and sees patterns, not problems. Workers see obstacles and frustrations in every colleague or client. Leaders see the currents beneath the surface. They notice fears, motivations, insecurities, ambitions, and strengths. They place people where they can contribute most, not where they are convenient or familiar. Observing patterns requires discipline. It is easy to react emotionally to others. A complaint can feel personal. Resistance can feel like defiance. But a leader steps back and asks what drives this behavior. Is it fear, pride, fatigue, or ambition? Understanding allows you to guide rather than fight. Influence grows through insight, not pressure. Leaders also observe themselves with the same rigor. Where do they avoid conflict to keep peace? Where do they overcommit to gain approval? Where does pride masquerade as principle? Awareness of self-patterns creates a feedback loop. You see clearly, you adjust, you grow. Leadership is not about pretending to be above emotion. It is about mastering how emotion informs action. Through this practice, the unpredictable becomes predictable. Workers live in constant shock. Leaders are steady. Not because they are unfeeling, but because they have studied patterns. They anticipate behavior. They prepare. They respond with calm authority. This creates a ripple effect. People trust leaders who do not disappear when trouble arises. They follow leaders who stand accountable. But embracing responsibility also means raising your standards. The world teaches people to settle for comfort and consensus. Decisions are weighed against peer approval rather than conviction. Workers avoid standing out to fit in. Leadership requires a different measure. Standards are personal. They are the invisible line you refuse to cross, even when no one is watching. They are the quality you refuse to compromise. They are the discipline you refuse to abandon. This commitment to personal standards is often lonely. Few will understand why you insist on more than effort alone. Few will cheer you when you demand results instead of applause. But the invisible power it creates is unmatched. Standards produce consistency. Consistency produces trust. Trust produces influence. Influence produces legacy. Leadership is built in this space. It is built in the daily choice to measure success not by hours spent but by results achieved. It is built in the willingness to see people clearly and place them wisely. It is built by owning failure and extracting wisdom from it. And it is built by refusing to hide behind excuses or the comfort of almost. When you operate in this way, you begin to shift the world around you. People notice your clarity, your accountability, your refusal to settle. They may not always agree, but they recognize competence and purpose. Your influence becomes real because it is backed by action and results, not just effort or intention. Napoleon Hill emphasized that leadership requires mastery of self and environment. Part of this mastery is recognizing that the world responds to outcomes. People respond to leaders who take responsibility, who guide through understanding, who see patterns instead of problems, and who insist on results. The rise from worker to leader is never about doing more. It is about doing better. It is about seeing clearly, acting deliberately, owning every outcome, not just your own, but the ripple effects of every decision. Leadership is heavy, but it is also the most liberating force a human can wield, and in that liberation lies your next step. Responsibility, clarity, and insight create momentum that others cannot replicate. When you embrace these principles, you begin to lead in a way that transforms not only your life but the lives of those around you. You stop moving with the crowd and begin shaping the course of events. Leadership is no longer about effort. Leadership is about outcome. It is about patterns. It is about accountability. And it is about rising above almost to deliver what truly matters. If you want, I can continue with part 6, the final part, in the same style and complete the 6-part series. Do you want me to do that next? Part 6, the leader's mind. Claiming your destiny. Engaging hook. There comes a moment in every person's life when you realize the world will not hand you permission. No one will tell you that you are capable, that you are ready, that you deserve to lead. The question becomes clear. Will you wait for permission or will you claim your destiny? True leaders do not wait. They act. They rise. They own the power that others leave unused. Part 6. In the final stretch of leadership, the greatest challenge is often the one no one talks about. It is not the tasks, not the people, not the crises. It is the mind. The mind becomes the battlefield where the worker is separated from the leader. Every thought, every belief, every assumption is tested. Do you believe you are here to follow, or do you believe you are here to shape? Do you measure life by approval or by vision? Do you settle for routine or demand growth? From the first moment we step into this world, we are trained to obey. We are guided, corrected, praised for compliance, rewarded for fitting in. The world tells us where to walk, how to sit, when to speak, what to think. For a lifetime, we measure worth by doing as expected, by finishing the tasks assigned to us, by checking boxes that someone else created. The worker is comfortable in this rhythm. They know how to move inside the pattern. They know how to survive and be accepted. But leadership asks a different question. Leadership asks not what must I do but what must be created. Not how do I fit in, but how do I shape the future. The difference is subtle but decisive. One follows the past. One builds the path forward. The final stage of this journey begins in silence. The world is loud, full of opinion, distraction, and constant demands. The worker reacts. The leader observes. The space between stimulus and response is sacred. This space allows judgment to form, clarity to sharpen, strategy to emerge. It is here that the leader becomes the master of self and circumstances. In this space, emotion is transformed from chaos into fuel. Anger becomes insight. Fear becomes preparation. Excitement becomes focus. The leader does not suppress feelings but refines them. Every reaction becomes a signal. Every impulse is examined. Every choice is intentional. This is the alchemy that turns human potential into achievement. Once mastery of self is underway, the leader turns outward with the same precision. People are no longer problems or obstacles. They are patterns. Every action, every decision, every response contains clues. To study them is to understand the currents that drive teams, organizations, and markets. To ignore them is to be swept along helplessly. Leadership is built on observation, analysis, and insight. The leader's focus is relentlessly on results. Effort is necessary, but it is the outcomes that define legacy. A bridge must hold. A plan must succeed. A team must move forward. Success is measured not by hours or struggle but by completion, by transformation, by impact. When failure occurs, it is analyzed, dissected, and converted into strategy. Excuses are rejected. Accountability is embraced. Standards become the compass. While the crowd measures life by consensus and comfort, the leader measures by conviction and excellence. A standard is a personal promise. It is a line you refuse to cross, a discipline you refuse to abandon, a quality you refuse to compromise. Standards create predictability, trust, and influence. They separate the worker from the leader, the follower from the visionary, the ordinary from the extraordinary. In every decision, leaders act from this foundation. They step into the hard moments, the uncomfortable spaces, the challenges that others avoid. They understand that influence is not inherited, it is earned through consistency, insight, and courage. They act when others hesitate. They speak when others stay silent. They build when others despair. Napoleon Hill emphasized that the mind is the most powerful instrument a person can possess. The leader wields this instrument with intent. They design their life like an architect designs a building. Every choice, every interaction, every thought is aligned with the vision. They do not allow the noise of the crowd to dictate priorities. They do not surrender to habit, fear, or doubt. They operate with clarity, purpose, and resolve. By the time a person reaches this stage, their world changes. People begin to follow, not because the leader commands, but because the leader embodies principles, clarity, and integrity. Influence becomes natural. Decisions become decisive. Action becomes purposeful. Energy that was once scattered chasing approval is now focused on creating progress. The worker is defined by routine. The leader is defined by vision. The worker reacts. The leader shapes. The worker seeks comfort. The leader seeks growth. The worker measures success by participation. The leader measures by transformation. These distinctions are not minor. They define destiny. In this final part of the journey, the leader recognizes that leadership is not a title, not a position, not applause. It is a practice, a mindset, a relentless pursuit of clarity and action. It is the ability to see the invisible, to understand the patterns, to own the outcomes, to act with integrity, and to refuse to settle for almost. It is the mastery of self before the mastery of circumstances. When you step into this level of leadership, the world responds. People notice your calm in crisis, your insight in chaos, your determination in challenge. You no longer chase approval. You no longer react to criticism. You do not need to be recognized. You simply act, and the impact of your actions speaks for itself. And here is the final truth that Hill often returned to: your mind is the source of everything. Wealth, influence, happiness, achievement, and fulfillment all begin with thought. The leader shapes thought, directs action, and aligns results with purpose. It is not chance. It is not luck. It is deliberate, intentional, and unwavering. This is your call to rise. To embrace the quiet power of observation. To refine your emotions into clarity. To see patterns instead of problems. To raise standards and shrink your circle to align with vision. To own every outcome and convert every failure into progress. This is leadership. This is mastery. This is the path to creating a life that matters. You are no longer a worker, following the footsteps of others. You are a leader, designing a path, shaping outcomes, and influencing the world around you. It begins in the mind, it is strengthened in action, and it is proven in results. If this message resonated with you, take the next step in your journey. Subscribe for more motivational insights. Share this with someone who is ready to rise above the ordinary. Leave a comment below and tell us how you will take responsibility for your outcomes starting today. Your destiny begins now.